Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I don't start mock drafting until, sometime mid to late March. However, Mr. Draft Insanity, Brian E. Roach, he was doing mock drafts. He's doing them for the 2020 draft already. So, no draft talk today, Brian, but we have lots of other gears to grind.
Oh, yeah. Look, I got my initial draft bug out, and now I'm ready to talk about something a little more meaty.
Yeah, so sorry, folks, if you were here for some more draft coverage. I don't know. I think Brian's going to try and do these things maybe every other week or so because, I don't know, I kind of laughed.
Oh, we'll have another one. We'll definitely have another one coming soon.
Can you make sure it's more realistic next time?
I thought that it wasn't that bad.
I know, we get pretty sensational, but I mean, how many of these mock drafts usually hit the mark on guys you're going to take? I think the only
Zero.
The only ones in recent memory was like, Steelers are going to take Jarvis Jones. They're going to take Jarvis Jones. So do we really want them to be right sometimes? No, on that note. There's plenty of other things we'll be talking about, killer beast type stuff. Antonio Brown giving a thank you. And then apparently a lot of guys at the Pro Bowl. You know, there is still football going on, but I guess it just doesn't count for one weekend. But the guys at the Pro Bowl talking about that door might be open. Everybody's so surprised that his teammates may be forgiving. Well, you don't know what's going on behind the closed door, so I am not shocked whatsoever with that. And then a lot of people making a mountain out of a molehill now that Juju Smith-Schuster was late for a Pro Bowl practice or whatever be the case with that. Who knows? Who cares? We got more important things to talk about, and that's the games that just happened, the Super Bowl that's coming up, blah Patriots. Everyone loves Sean McVay. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread and also toasters. And then he's the host who doesn't like toast, folks, if you're not aware. But to get to all of this point was, there's two big games that were this past weekend. And I think everybody thought that these games were going to be close games or important games. So, the NFL in its right mind, they assign the good referees or the best referees that they have to these games. They both go to overtime, by the way, and they both have controversial calls. And of course, when we talked many moons ago about the Steelers losing to the Saints, we said there's different things the Steelers could have done to prevent losing in that game. And of course, a lot of people were throwing the same shade at the New Orleans Saints for how their game finished with the Los Angeles Rams. My tinfoil hat's been on the whole entire time about, Roger Goodell, L.A., TV market, big bucks, celebrities, Hollywood, all this stuff. Got to get it all lined up, right? But aside from conspiracy theories and things of that nature, today we want to talk about officiating. We want to talk about not only our we're going to have the Festivus polls again. Maybe there's like a later, like Chinese New Year or an Orthodox Christmas where we could pull out the Festivus poll later.
Yeah.
and air our grievances.
I just want to make sure I understood what you just said. Did you say you thought the NFL put their best referees in these games?
Well, here's how this postseason stuff. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, and I know everybody's just like fire all of them and things of that. And the reason I brought up the Saints thing first was a lot of people said, "Oh, it's karma," and I was yelling at the screen because it just irritates me to watch a game that gets dictated by officials, even if it's not my own team. I had no dog in this fight, but it was absolutely everyone saw the obvious that Nickel Roby Coleman just flatlined Tommy Lee Lewis, didn't turn around for the ball. We've seen lesser things called for pass interference that affected the Steelers games this year. You can't challenge it. False starts you can't challenge. Offsides or neutral zone infractions you can't challenge. Roughing the passer you can't challenge, and we saw all of these things affect Sunday's games. And as far as your quote, I'm going to be long-winded on this, man, because I understand thankless job that officiating is. These guys are human. They're trying to process things in real time without replay most of the time to benefit their aid them. And you know what? They do pretty good with that, but the speed of the game is so fast that it makes it impossible for people to be right. They are human. Humans will make mistakes as well. I think these guys need help. But as far as the NFL, it's who's available to those games. I would think all of the NFL referees would make themselves available, but there were some guys that were retiring that probably said thanks, no thanks. There's also the rating system that they use internally to grade their officials on who is the best. There are the guys who saw these teams previously in the year, who saw these teams and had a good game, who saw these teams and had a bad game. Who does Coach Sean Payton or Bill Belichick or Andy Reid not want to? I don't think Sean McVay has this say yet, but your elder statesmen in the coaching craft, they're going to say, I don't want to see this guy. I'm sure Bill Belichick didn't want to see Clete Blakeman. He was the Deflategate referee for, jeez. Clete Blakeman's a guy that when you have a game with him, the Steelers have had many Ravens-Steelers games where, he looks like a deer in headlights. The game stopped, like he and Tony Crane stopped these games for 5 minutes because they can't figure out, the rear end from a hole in the ground sometimes. And Blakeman was part of that, quote, all-star crew with the Rams and the Chiefs earlier in the year that totally botched the game that was moved from Mexico. Tons of bad officiating, and everybody panned it and mocked it. And we've been watching this. We've been talking about it as Steelers fans. We've been talking about it as football fans. It just doesn't get any better. And then, lo and behold, people are making the connection. I was just talking about this today. I talked about this on the show last week that Bill Vinovich and Clete Blakeman got these assignments. Vinovich's crew are the guys that refereed the Steelers and Chargers. I made mention of them blowing the false start call, blowing the blocks in the back and everything else. And it's just like, you say fire them all because there aren't enough guys. You got all these guys retiring now. They're dropping out. I don't know how. I got some ideas on how the NFL can fix this. We're going to talk about it. But first of all, I just want to say it's gotten so bad that people are filing a lawsuit to replay the game from the point where the call was blown, with multiple zebras looking at it and swallowing their whistles and pocketing their flags. And you could say it's karma or whatever, but I don't want that happening to my team. I have felt the wrath of Jesse Caught It and Joe Hayden defended it, and I'm sick and tired of this stuff. End rant.
Yeah, look. How long have I been using the hashtag the refs stink?
So much
probably since I was in diapers.
Since so much that on Twitter now, if I start to type it, it actually shows up as a suggestion.
There you go. And we got a lot of grief. We got a lot of grief about complaining about the Chargers game and complaining about the Saints game because we're just homers. It's not just homers. We've said this repeatedly. I don't want to watch bad officiating take over any game. When I watch a game that's a non-Steelers game, I'm watching it because I like watching football, and I want to watch football. I don't want to watch refs make calls or miss calls or, essentially officiate the outcome of a game. And while I don't buy the karma stuff, and look, for the members of Steelers Nation who are playing the world's smallest violin for the Saints fans, I get it. We were robbed. They were robbed. But the underlying point isn't that I feel like the Saints got their just due because the Saints didn't get the refs to blow it. The refs just stink. And they need, look, what was it, like 2 years ago that the NFL finally decided to hire 21 to 24 full-time refs, a limited amount of full-time refs. There's 17 ref crews, right? Or more. I don't even know how many there are at this point.
It's in the low. I think it might be 21 or 22 because you got to consider, let me see. You've got 32 teams, and when they're all playing with no bye, you have 16 games, and I don't think anybody's going. There is the potential that a crew goes from like Thursday to a Monday night game or something, but I believe those situations are rare, and they're not. I don't think everyone is working every single week or weekend. That would be exhausting. These guys still have to recuperate with their bodies, with their travel, and that all affects you mentally mentally as well as a referee. You got to do, you got to be fit. You got to run up and down the field. You can't be fatigued. You can't in any way. You can't have any stressors on you. You got to have your mind clear and focus on the game that's at hand. So yes, there's definitely a minimum. I wish I knew the actual number because they probably mix and match a little bit. They try and keep the crews together. That is until the postseason. Then they're like, well, you deserve a postseason game and you deserve a postseason game. And since you guys didn't work together before, this will just work out fine and dandy. It's like mixing and matching teammates with the football team in the middle of the season. It doesn't work out that well all the time.
No, look, the bottom line is, is there a way to fix it? I believe that there is. Absolutely. Look, for years, it's not that officiating hasn't had its issues. And I think we all understand if I'm going to pretend that I can be realistic about this for a moment, which is maybe a real stretch, but let's say, we get that they're people. We get that they're going to make mistakes. There is no such thing as perfection. Doesn't exist. So I can live with mistakes on occasion. But, the amount of glaring error is different than an occasional mistake. And I know people want to poo-poo all this. Oh, they get the vast percentage of the plays right. I don't actually even know if I believe that.
Even with replay.
Even with replay. Look, and don't think I'm in the group that wants to add replay of PI calls, because I'm not. I want them to get the daggone calls right. That's what I want. And there's multiple eyeballs on every play. The refs are following the play the same way we're following the play. And if one guy doesn't make the call, another guy has to have the cojones to step up and say, "You blew that. Bleep bleep bleep. Here's the flag." I don't care if it makes the other guy look bad. I don't care. The point should be get the call right. Make sure in the back rooms you said something. You said pass interference or breaking the rules is the same as cheating. Because it is. You can't head-to-head contact a guy before the ball gets there, blow him up, and expect to get away with it. And yet they did. And I remember reading, and this wasn't even by a Steelers beat writer. This was a national writer. After the Steelers-Saints game, you got guys like Shannon Sharp saying that the games looked fixed to fans because that's how bad everybody thought the Joe Hayden PI call was. This was worse.
I didn't think there could be one worse. It's on the other end of the spectrum. You have one that isn't a call that's called, and then you have one that is a call and isn't called. And that's, it's decisions in general. It's the lack of making a decision or not making a decision when it's necessary. And you said the key words, the crux of this entire episode is just getting the calls right. And you mentioned ego. And it's funny because I just wrote up some articles for the website. I'm polishing them off. And that was one of the bullet points I put on how the NFL can fix its officiating problem. And it's get the egos out of the way. And part of that ego is for some reason you can't now. I don't want to jump right to saying that I want an instant replay pass interference. Pass interference is a judgment call. That's going to be tough. That's going to be a very tough thing to scrutinize with an instant replay. But what I want the NFL to do is figure out some sort of way that any call, you can't just say, well, I'm sorry, false start, not reviewable. It's black and white. It's that happened. This play happened. Someone's in the neutral zone. Someone's offside. Someone flinches before the snap. Play clock is expired, which that one I get a little bit of leeway with. It's okay. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's tongue in cheek. You're close. Okay. But I mean, when it's egregious, I want somebody to see it the same way we see it. Everybody could see it on TV with all of these different camera angles, which are different than the angles the officials are seeing sometimes. Sometimes they have the best seat in the house. Sometimes we do. And somebody needs to hit the buzzer, whether it's down on the field or something. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is the way FIFA runs things with the World Cup. There's a couple of different things here because I talked on the last episode about, why don't they have camera angles where we could see the goal line, and better. They should be like 30 different camera angles on that. You got the CBS eye or whatever they call the thing where it whizzes around in a 360-degree angle, but yet we can't find some type of technology, a drone that they fly out on the field or something that spots the ball in the right place. They can't chip the ball, so you know exactly where it is. You know what? It's infrared. I don't care what it is. It's like the Predator or something looking at this thing where you can see it through bodies like an X-ray, and there's some type of stitching in the ball. I don't care what it takes. Soccer has this with a soccer ball, whether or not it's in the goal or not. They have this technology. Why doesn't the NFL have it? The NFL has billions and billions upon billions of dollars. It would cost them nothing to put extra cameras out there. It would cost them nothing to do whatever with the ball. Everyone gets to have the same uniform Bose headphones and Microsoft Surface tablets and everything like this. Why can't every stadium be equipped with the same type of technology for this stuff? I just want them to get the calls right. Now, getting back to what I was saying about the World Cup, they have what you have in the NFL is you have a command center that oversees all these different games, and it's the same people who do every single game, and they're the bosses basically of all of these referees. These referees are already in a pressure cooker as it is. They do want to get the calls right because they want to make sure they get an assignment the next day, that they're not the next week or whatever, and make this extra money and whatnot. But not everybody's full-time. I don't know that I need to believe that everybody needs to be full-time and just a referee. Would that help? Yeah, I think I would take away like somebody's traveling from a job that they have for work, or you know, I don't think any of the guys in the NFL are still doing a college game on Saturday and traveling in on Sunday. I'm pretty sure they're required to be there at least a day in advance. And they meet with the coaches. They get the information from those teams as to whether or not they have trick plays and all these other things. But you need to get something else more. You need to get some more referees out there. You need to get some guys that have their eye in the sky. And the way the soccer world works is you have guys that are current referees. And I even believe in the NFL you can have guys that aren't current referees. You have so many referees in soccer because these guys are running all around the field with like nuts. There's no stops or pauses or timeouts and stuff like every play like there is with football, right? So they have current guys that sit on their days off. This is like not really a day off because mentally they have to be there. They have to have their eyes prepared. But these are guys that are currently plugged into the game, and they observe, and there's usually one for each of the referees in that crew. So there's like three main guys, and then there's like a fourth official. And these guys wear headsets on the field themselves, but then like the guy that's on the sidelines has communication with what they call the VAR, and it's a video assistant referee. And what they do is these guys are in the booth, and there's multiple, monitors. It looks like a TV control center, you know what I mean? But they're only watching one specific game, and they're referees that are in that league or tournament or process in the case of the World Cup. And you know what? They have the cojones when there's something that's controversy. You could tell the people are talking. They're talking amongst each other with the headsets. You could tell that they show the people in the booth. They have the cameras on them. Millions of people around the world are watching this as to whether or not they have the cojones, the guts to override or overturn whatever decision is on the field. And you know what? The guys that are out there on the field blowing the whistle, they set their ego aside and say, we're doing what's right for this game. We're going to get the call right. And they trust their peers enough in order to do that. And I think that's something that the NFL needs to consider instead of just having Al Riveron. And I think he has two assistants who watch all of these different. They completely missed a call this year. Wasn't that the Patriots again this year? Where I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was a Rob Gronkowski touchdown or something, if I recall, earlier in the season where they said, and I believe it was once again our buddy Tony Corrente, another guy. He's the Jesse Coddett referee for those who forgot. It's just he's also the Xavier Grimble fumbled out of bounds, which Xavier Grimble did. So I'll give him credit for that. But the long point of my story here is that you have basically one idea. It's like the buck stops with Al Riveron, where let the officials do their job and give them more tools, because when that call didn't come in, these guys just proceeded with playing the game. Well, we didn't get the replay thing because what were these guys doing? Were they busy on the bathroom break or going to the vending machine? Like, you need somebody on site. I don't trust the whole going to New York thing. Put somebody on site up in a press box or something and let them see the angle that everybody sees it on TV. Now, in addition to that, Brian, as I get long-winded, I want some of those things to be reviewable, but I don't necessarily know that you need to give more challenge flags to the coaches. I don't want a challenge flag for a pass interference. I don't want Basically, what I want is those things I previously talked about. If they happen, false starts, offsides, things of that nature. I want somebody up in the booth who has that view, like the Booger Mobile, straight down the goal, line of scrimmage or whatever. Or another camera that should always be fixated on the first down marker. Of course, I mean, what's the most important things here? Line of scrimmage, first down, end zones, goal lines. Right? They got the cameras over the field goal posts and stuff. I want somebody to just be down there and they hit like a buzzer. It's like a taser that the referees go, blow, stop the game, something's screwed up, let's correct it and make sure we get it right. I don't want them to stop for a half hour, though, but I don't think something like that should be. It should be this easy. Hey, guys, missed a false start. Okay, what's going on? 10-yard penalty, got to move these guys back, line of scrimmage is here. Okay, information's been relayed instead of just one guy trying to, pick his butt for 2-3 minutes while we have this extended timeout break, trying to figure out what the people in New York are trying to decide. They're trying to decide, well, did Julian Edelman really touch the ball or not? Well, we called it a fumble on the field, but you know what? We really want the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So even though there isn't conclusive evidence, even though our replay rules say you have to have something that's conclusive, just like Jesse caught it, well, there isn't anything conclusive there. You got to stay with the call on the field. Nah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to overturn it. I think that is absolutely preposterous. And that's the thing that really has to change is their own mandates. They're not following it. That's why people think it's fixed.
Now, I'm going to take a completely different take on this, and I want to get back to the full-time thing because I actually have an issue with this. All right, but I want replay gone. And here's why I'm going to say that. Too many of these guys make calls or don't make calls and wait for replay to fix it. Stop. Don't use it as a crutch. And that's what it's become to the officiating teams, is a crutch. I want replay out of the loop. Not because it doesn't make calls that they miss, sometimes get made up and they're important things. But you know what? You cannot replay everything. I get that. And as long as these officials are going to use replay as their safeguard, as their security blanket so that they could suck their thumbs and go, wasn't me. See, replay fixed it. I want it gone. I want it gone. I think it puts the responsibility back on these guys. Now, that ties into this whole full-time thing. You said, I don't know if we need them all. I do. I think we need full-time refs in this league. Why? Because the rules are ridiculously stupid and convoluted. And these guys don't know the rules. Half of the time, they don't understand what the rules are. And I don't know that this is why, but why did we have a referee stopping the game twice to tell us the game clock is correct?
Well, you know what? That's a game clock operator, and they're not technically an official. They're usually they're hired, by the team or I don't know. There's some auspice of the league or something that they may be, but usually it's I can tell you from my own experience in different sports, it's an on-site type person. But see, that's why I know. But
do they need to stop the clock? Do they need to stop the game for a minute and a half, and then when they're done, go, the game clock is correct?
Well, I think that was just absolutely ridiculous. I think there's definitely communication problems, and I think that's where having extra guys that are in a room, that doesn't even need to come down to the field anymore. You only stop it when it's absolutely necessary, and there's still going to be some hiccups and mistakes, but I think they could work that out. Now, the replay thing, Brian, to completely get rid of it, I don't know if these guys use it as a crutch. I see a lot of them call things that are touchdowns, like Derek Watt's touchdown with the Chargers-Ravens, and not call it. And those things need to be handled from somebody that says, no, that's wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And they still got it wrong, and they still marked the ball in the wrong spot. That's why I say chip the stupid ball. I mean, Chris Hogan catches a pass. It was a third down pass, and it hits the ground. And they watch it on replay, and they still get it wrong. That's the things I don't understand. I know that's the reason you're saying to get rid of it and just go with the call. Steelers fans should be okay with that. Immaculate reception. If there was replay, I cringe if there was replay in the days of Franco Harris.
I just look. My mindset is refs made mistakes, and it got to a point where they felt replay would help them. I don't think replay has helped them.
I don't think they use it right, though. That's my point.
I agree. And I'm not against certain types of technology being used. Like, to me, the chip in the ball and the goal line sensor, that makes complete and total sense. The downside is, how do you know when a guy's knee is down? How do you know when an elbow is hit and before it crosses the goal line? So even that's not going to be perfect, right? But here's the other thing about this full-time thing. Here's the problem. If they are full-time refs, right? First of all, I think starting this year, the average salary of an NFL ref was over $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year. If you could have been told as a kid, you can work 16 or 20 weeks out of the year and run around with a bunch of pro football players. Look, you're not good enough to play, but you can be an official and make over $200,000 a year. Wouldn't that have been a attractive career opportunity for you?
Oh,
you know,
I definitely have an opinion on that, and I don't disagree about that whatsoever. I don't know that every referee in the NFL is making
that's why I said average salary.
I mean, you got a crew of 8 guys. The referees, the head guys, yeah. I mean, they're making the big bucks because ultimately the buck stops there. But you notice most of these guys, Ed Hockley, a lawyer, these guys work for, I don't know, they work in like fields where you can travel, work remotely, work off a laptop, and how do I want to frame this? That disincludes, I don't know if that's a word, but it excludes, that's what I'm looking for. It excludes people who think when I'm a kid, hey, I want to do that, but they decide to do something else for a line of work, and they need the financial and job security, and they can't go and become, number one, you got to come through the college ranks pretty much. You have to have that experience. You just don't jump right into the NFL, you know what I mean? And it's very tough with travel and vacation and time off and this and that. But if there were full-time jobs, and it is a full-time, I guarantee you see, they're not just working the 16-game schedule or whatever, the 17-week schedule. There's other meetings and conference calls, and these guys they still train their bodies, most of them. They have to stay in a certain shape. They're watching film, the good ones, reading the rule book at night, like people read the dictionary that are nerds. And, they do those things, and you don't see it off the clock. But at the same time, if they have like a real-world job where they're putting in 40 or 45 hours, or minus vacation time, if they have a lot of vacation time, they could do it. Let's say they're a police officer or firefighter or something like that. And, they got to go back to those jobs. That takes away from them being a professional football referee. And you want them to be paid full-time to be a professional football referee, like the professional football players and coaches, and that's all that's on their mind. That's all that should be on the referee's mind. I've seen it with other sports. I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with it at all. Can't disagree.
No, I just think it there are a lot of things that go a long way. And look, one of our readers, or our listeners, I should say, because you can't read the podcast.
I've tried. It's quite boring.
Yes, Peter Underwood, who lives in Australia, his daughter was one of our helmet-worthy winners. He is very vocal with us on social media, on Twitter, and he wrote a little piece and he sent it to me about the refs. And one of his ideas, and I think that there's some merit in this, it has to do with the fact that you've got, how many college teams in the United States, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of college football teams. And you've got 100, maybe tens of thousands of players who are never, ever going to reach the NFL, but who may be really smart people and maybe really would like to work in the NFL. And if there was a avenue for people who had the passion and desire to take this as a career path and start using people who understand the game, first of all, understand it not just from a rules perspective, but from a player's perspective, can look at a play and determine, did what Joe Hayden did his finger touching the back of the Saints player dramatically alter his ability to catch the pass? No, therefore I don't need to throw pass interference. Did Roby Coleman blowing up the guy dramatically impact his ability to catch the pass? Yes, I need to throw a flag. There's a whole slew of potential people, potential candidates. And his suggestion is, why not make the officiating job attractive enough that people like this, be they men, be they women, whoever, want to pursue this as a career more so than they may do now, because a lot of people may not know that it can be a lucrative career. A lot of people may not understand that, and it's hard. Like you said, you got to go through the college ranks and whatever. But if there was a formalized way to go and find a way to become an NFL referee, again, you're talking the best of the best should be the guys who are there. Well, I don't believe that the best of the best are the guys who are there. It just doesn't appear to be that way. And on top of everything else, I just feel like you certainly, I agree with him, you've got this group of individuals who could potentially help make this better. If you add that into, using the appropriate technologies to improve things, there's a path for me to never have to type hashtag the refs stink again. There's a path to it. I don't see it happening, but there is a path.
That's, you know what, I can only half agree with that. I understand looking for a pool of people who may understand the game, but where does that leave our female referees? Just because somebody like you or I, let's take Mike Tomlin for even an example, or Todd Haley, or some one of these guys that are coaches that were never like a high-level player, but they're good coaches. I don't think Todd Haley was ever a football player, period. Sean McVay, how young is he? Clearly so young that did he play beyond high school? I don't know. I think he did play some college, maybe small college. So being a good player or being a player doesn't necessarily preclude being a good coach, nor does it mean that you're a good referee and you understand the application of rules. Now, everybody understands.
I got to make sure I'm clear here. I'm not excluding anybody. I'm using that pool as a example.
Oh, no. I understand.
The idea here is, if there is a formalized method for becoming a referee that is sponsored by the NFL, or a path, then anybody can do it. It's not about whether they're an ex-player or not. I'm just using that as an example of a pool of people who have a passion for the game. But there are a pool of people who have passions for the game that never played. Absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, it's one of those things where I said, I've been an official with soccer for many, many years, and I was a far better referee, even at a young age, identified for talent as a referee because I sucked as a player. And, you go into that, and I didn't mean to say that necessarily about females, but I'm just saying, if you just take ex-football players, for example, some of those guys may be bright enough to officiate games, some might not. And many people get into officiating because they were former players. There are people who've taken interests with that. And I believe in a lot of the avenues that they have in the NFL now to get females involved with coaching and things of this nature. They're going to tap into some potential people who are very knowledgeable and smart and able to read things from an X's and O's perspective. They'll do the same thing with officials too, just as long as that stigma kind of gets, I think it's away from that, you know what I mean? Especially with, I can't remember her name. She's a side judge, but she just got the first female assignment during the wild card weekend, or was it the divisional weekend? But I think it was the Ravens and Chargers game. Actually, she was out there, and it's like, we need more people like that. But there's a lot of career sacrifices that you kind of got to make it easy to jump through those hoops. And the career doesn't just jump from become a referee, go to the NFL. You got to work high school games. You got to work college games. You're probably working like some flag football or Pee Wee games or stuff. And some people are just content with just doing that and be able to go home and spend time with their family. A lot of people, they lose families or they never have families because this is a let's live and travel out of our suitcase type of profession if it was your full-time thing. Now, making it full-time would help ease some of that because in a lot of cases, if they're not full-time, guess what? This might be not the only thing these guys do. Then they have another job, and that's certainly anybody who's worn many hats knows how difficult that is. So that's kind of where you're at. Now, on the other side of it, you see how thankless of a job it is. You see people get screamed at. Youth sports, a lot of officials are fleeing from it. It's an epidemic in pretty much every sport that I'm aware of. I read a lot of different referee things with different sports and know people that actually officiate other sports as well. And, that's where you're killing it too. And you really start to kill it with guys that are around my age in the mid-30s because that's when people are, trying to settle down with families and things of that. And, when you have lesser responsibilities as a younger person, you're free to go about however you go about. That's why you see a lot of older guys that are the officials in the NFL to some degree, but a lot of them are stepping aside. It's either because they've been doing it for a long time or just the scrutiny is just becoming too much of a pressure cooker. And that's why I offer these things like technology and the expanded way of replay. I mean, there's no reason to – I don't know if Ed Hockley or some of these guys remain in touch, come in for any type of seminars or learning or conferences or do conference calls or help mentor some of the newer officials in the NFL. I sure hope they're still involved in the process. But, if a guy like Ed Hockley or Pete Morelli or I believe Walt Coleman, if not both Walts, Walt Anderson as well. I know Walt Coleman's one who's just stepped away this season doing his last game. These guys should still be involved. If they want to be involved, they could be part of this replay system or something like that. Instead of Dean Blandino's like one and done as a VP of officiating, goes over and works for Fox, and then he doesn't really speak his mind necessarily. He's still kind of generous in much the same way most people are if they're a former player of a certain team. I guess that doesn't work with the Steelers, looking at you, Terry Bradshaw, James Harrison, Ryan Clark, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what I mean? You're not going to throw guys that were your friends, basically your extended family for many, many years, under the bus. In fact, one of these games, I heard the exact quote, and it was being somewhat kind and generous, but it was that Joe Hayden play with Alvin Kamara. He had a different angle on it, and you do because sometimes you think maybe you saw something that wasn't there, and maybe you're being coached as a referee to look for something that you missed in a different game, or you've been coached to look for this from a certain player because there's certain behaviors that you're trying to alter. You mentioned this, I believe, even with the Antonio Brown stuff. There's behavior to change, and some people don't change their ways, and blah blah blah. Well, with the officials, you're trying to always get everything right, and they're not going to be able to get everything right. And I say you need to be able to give them some help because the guy it's not his fault that necessarily he's in a poor position. There's recommended positions you're supposed to be in on the field in order to make these calls. And when you're in a recommended position and something happens within the blink of an eye, you then have to make a judgment call right or wrong. And that's where you could use some help with some of the replay stuff. I'm just not one that wants to see 5 red hankies in Bill Belichick's back pocket, and they throw 5 of them, and you have 10 because the other side, Tomlin's on the other side, for example, and they throw 10 flags, and then all of a sudden all you're seeing is Doritos commercials in half a screen while they try and figure this stuff out. I'm not necessarily advocating that. I think there's got to be a swift process or something, even if there's like a delay clock, like a 5 or 10 seconds that before a play clock operates or something like that. I don't know. That might add too much to the game, but I think you see where I'm trying to get at is use some blend of technology, use some of the guys that have been around. You can also put some of the up-and-coming guys that you're looking at, some prospects, almost kind of like an internship, that it may be coming rising stars out of the college ranks or something. You know what I mean? They're going to USC, let's say, and officiating a game at Southern Cal. Keep them there for the Rams game, or send them over to the Chargers game. Put them in the booth with one of these veteran guys like a Hockley and somebody else that's maybe a current official or something. Rotate some of these guys in and out between those positions, and it's a learning experience for everyone. And then what you don't have is you don't have your boss yelling in your ear and one guy dictating the outcome of all these games. You have these teams. I think it's more personable. And then at the end of the day, if Al Riveron wants to give us a line of crap about why the call was right, or completely ignore it when he sends out his late Friday videos every week, then so be it. But there's got to be a better way with some of this. You know what else, Brian? Before we get too long in this show, you mentioned pass interference earlier. You mentioned not wanting to necessarily challenge that. That's what I'm talking about, judgment calls. Somebody puts their arm out. Did they get like a disproportionate force off of their arm? Or if you grab somebody, you grab somebody. I think that's pretty obvious. When you headhunt someone like Roby Coleman did, pretty obvious. I mean, those are the ones I'm looking at. What I'm not looking to do is necessarily take all of the judgment calls out of the game. I'm not looking to throw flags on those sorts of things. But I think what would really settle down the controversy on pass interference calls is this. Why on earth in the NFL is it a spot penalty. The Ravens Joe Flacco made a name for himself just heaving the ball downfield at receivers that couldn't catch a beach ball and get flags. If it's 15 yards like it is in every other level of the game, I think you knock out a lot of the crying and complaining. You still wouldn't in the case of this Saints one because it was near the goal line and it should have been a new set of downs. But in the case of the one with Joe Hayden that we were really upset about with the Steelers game, that was 4th and 1. It was a 30-some yard pass. It put them right on the 1 yard line with a brand new set of downs, and it was absolutely ridiculous. If anything, if you don't end up with all of this different technology and cameras and extra replay officials and all this jazz that I'm talking about, they got to do something about this being a spot foul because it's absolutely killing the game when the rules favor the offense.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think, it is the only play, the only penalty that can absolutely and completely flip a game. Because if you're midfield, 4th and whatever, and you throw a bomb and, a Hail Mary and you get a PI call, guess what? That changes the game. Whereas if you're only going to get a 15-yard penalty, you still got to work for that. It's a disproportionate, penalty for what actually is occurring. I just think the college rule, there are a lot of college rules, and maybe someday that's a show too, not today, but there are a lot of college rules that I think would be more beneficial at the NFL level, and I agree with you on this one. I think a 15-yard penalty makes much more sense than this spot rule because it disproportionately favors the offense.
Yeah, it's an unfair punishment. There are other rules. Overtime, hello. That's a whole other, it's a whole other bottle of wax for a whole other show because I got a whole list of them that I kind of want to go through. They've kind of neutered kickoffs as well. And what you do is that's not necessarily on the officials, so it's kind of a little bit of a different topic. But I think changing the pass interference thing takes some of the heat off of the referees because it's not this huge punishment like, you just got 35 yards and penalty yards there and just march you right down the field, and it keeps some teams in games and stuff like that. I mean, we also saw the roughing the passer penalty too, and I think they got to do something with that because, I think
they need to take out the addendum that says breathing hard on Tom Brady is a penalty.
Yeah. And you know what? What did I say? John Perry has the Super Bowl. And once again, when you're talking about the quarterbacks and, whether or not they wear skirts, that was the one, the divisional game, wasn't it? That was the Rams and the Cowboys where Dak Prescott was in the grasp. He felt he was within the grasp and blew a play dead, like completely soon. I think they're being instructed. This comes from league directives. Let's not kid ourselves. This has to deal with concussions too, and
absolutely.
I mean, it's under the guise of player safety, which absolutely it is player safety. You want to keep players safe, but it is a violent game too, and I think some things need to be permitted to, let's say, play out to a certain degree, and I think they're being instructed to do some things like that, like the Tom Brady roughing the passer call against the Chiefs just this past Sunday, and the Dak Prescott call I'm just calling right here, or some of the other things with the offside and not allowing Ben or Aaron Rodgers to heave a ball down the field on a free play that are neutering the game as well and putting a lot of heat on the referees where there shouldn't be. You shouldn't even notice the guys are there, and when they do their job, that would be okay. They're trying to do their job, and their job puts them in a position where they're always in the spotlight as that third team on the field, and that's what really needs to change. However the NFL comes about that, they have to change it, and again, the overlying topic is just get it right.
Absolutely. I can't,
I don't know. I bumped Siri here. Siri even said, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Must have been the referees.
Siri's like, I'm not sure how to fix it. If Siri doesn't know how to fix it, I don't know how to fix it. You don't know how to fix it. Somebody has to figure out how to fix it. Maybe we should ask Alexa. But I think, look, I grew up watching college and professional football at a time when the rules were different, obviously. And, while you could yell and you would hate a referee that made a bad call or missed a call, it just was not as egregious as it appears to be now. And it's like with everything else. You've got all cameras at every conceivable angle on every single thing. The technology is there to slow things down to the point where you can see the blades of grass move when a toe touches them. It is certainly much more difficult now to be a referee than it was in the past. And so I get that. But at the same time, there needs to be a certain amount of consistency with how things are called. You talked about the Brady pass, roughing the passer. Same thing happens to Mahomes. It doesn't get called. And it was actually roughing the passer because there was an actual blow to the head that wasn't called, whereas a fake blow to the head is called. There is a percent when national heads, when studio people are like Shannon Sharp are saying the games appear fixed, that is a real problem for the NFL. Because if I know there's a guy on Twitter who came back at me with some things about how he watches wrestling and he understands it's scripted, and it also he's now accepted that the NFL is scripted. That's a problem. That's a problem that they have to find a way to deal with this, because you've got a whole sports betting network that's built around these games being determined on the field, not pre-scripted. So, or having outside
influences.
Real issues there.
Yeah, or
that
having
perception is bad.
Yeah, it's very bad. And the outside influences, you had, I mentioned FIFA, and there are plenty of match fixing scandals all over, Europe and things of that nature with soccer. You had the guy in the NBA that was doing point shaving years ago. What was it? Was it Dunleavy? I think was the name. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if that's correct, but there's certainly a possibility, and people certainly think that. And of course, there's cameras everywhere, so you're seeing things that necessarily you may not have seen when you were watching games years ago too, that probably still went on and you would be upset about. But you know what? The technology wasn't there. Now that the technology's there, you can't break the rules. That's all I'm saying. So, well, we'll have more coming up, I'm sure. And the Pro Bowl probably won't have any type of controversy in it. I'm sure the Super Bowl will offer us some wacko play that's never happened before, that they'll have to create a new rule for. Sean McVay is on the competition committee. Mike Tomlin's on the competition committee. We could expect something to start getting into the discussion phase. Just hopefully they don't muddy the waters anymore. Simplify it, dumb it down like they do the catch rule type thing. Almost like playground rules. But, even on the playground, I think some people could see if there was no referees whatsoever and there's just those two teams, some of these calls would have flags where there's not, and vice versa on the other hand. And that's basically how we all want it to be called. So Brian up against it. So thanks once again, my friend, for not throwing the red challenge flag at me.
Absolutely. Look, fire them all. Let's go back to Leatherheads football.
There you go. And we'll just play in the mud. Well, we'll play the game in Mexico next year, apparently. So, all right, folks, you heard it here. We'll look for your comments. I'm sure there's so many things we glossed over that we would get into very much more detail on, and we'd be more than happy to. So leave us some comments. Don't forget to subscribe. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. Until next time, be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.